Hello everyone. Good morning, good morning. We're going to get started. So grab a chair and one of those last yummy sticky buns. Those are really good. I am a preacher's kid and I said this is a killer coffee hour. Closer. It's good that I asked for this. I said to me, you have two of the softest spoken people here this morning, so I want to make sure you could hear us. I'm Melanie McFarland. I'm a mentor. I've been doing this off and on for about 20 years. Closer? Really? Wow. Okay. Better? It's really good that I have this. So let me tell you a little bit about how we're going to spend our time together this morning. And don't worry, we have lots of time for questions and answers and conversation. I'm going to give you a very fast crash course in prison population in the U.S. It's going to be about 5 minutes. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what being a mentor entails and what it's meant to me. And then I'm going to hand it over to my good friend Ken Tell, who was a student in the TEST program and is about to resume his studies on campus. And he's going to share his experience, and then we're going to open it up to all of you. Sound good? And if you can't hear me, just raise your hand. Okay. Oh, now we lost our signal. Let's see if we can make this work. Uh-oh. I think we've got to get Sarah back. Oh, yay. Okay. So I know this is small lettering, so I'm going to tell you. The United States has the highest incarceration rate of any country in the free world. We incarcerate more people than any other country. The yellow bar, that's not a country, that's the state of Massachusetts. And here's Canada. So this is the incarceration rates per 100,000 people, and the source is prisonpolicy.org, which compiles a lot of this data. So I just want to let that sit for about 5 seconds. We have a real incarceration problem in the U.S., and a lot of this is stuff that I didn't know, and so I think it's good for us to know. It helps set the stage for why we do what we do. There's a background to it. Before I hit the next slide, who do we incarcerate? Any guesses? Yes. So here's the thing though. Who commits the most crimes? Exactly. So according to FBI statistics for the most recent year we have is 2020, white people account for 69% of all arrests. And yet, if you're a black person in the US, you are 8 times more likely, this is the black population, American, Indian, or Alaska Native and Hispanic are 5 times more likely to be incarcerated. And remember all those white people who get arrested? They account for very little of our incarceration rates. And this is the Asian population, which arguably is also a smaller population. But there are these massive racial disparities in our incarceration rates. And this is the source is the Bureau of Justice Statistics. We also incarcerate lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people at 3 times the rate of straight people. And this, we factor in crimes. I mean, this is not that people are committing worse crimes. We are incarcerating different people differently. And this just reflects systems of discrimination throughout the country. So why would it be any different? It sort of makes sense, but it still surprised me. No country incarcerates more women than the United States. So again, like all the ways in which people are discriminated against in the outside world just follow into our carceral system and the way we punish people. And I wanted to keep the slides really short, so I spared you the slide, but these rates are also reflected in how people are punished inside prison. So you are much more likely to land in the hole or get, disciplined and all of that inside prison if you're a person of color, if you're a woman, if you're queer. It just follows you right inside. And I want to acknowledge that we're getting more and more depressed, and this is the lowest point, and then we're gonna pull you up. So this to me is the heart of the problem, is that we incarcerate people, and then when we release them, we just send them right back. It's like a revolving door. So this is the statistic I cited in the service. More than half of people released from prison are sent back within 1 year. 76% within 3 years. And that just tells me that incarceration isn't solving anything. It's called the Department of Corrections, but according to the data, there's not a lot of correcting that's going on. Now, I should point out, this doesn't mean that people are returning to a life of crime. If you are on parole, parole is an extremely conditional form of release. And so if you're on parole and you run a red light or have a moving violation or you cross a state line or you're in contact with someone else with an ankle bracelet, the system just automatically puts you back in. So imagine if we got pulled over for running a red light and we ended up in prison. That's crazy. That's not a prisonable offense, but that's how the system works. And that's why people, it's not that they necessarily recidivate to a life of crime, it's that parole is very common and parole offenses are very common. They're kind of hard to avoid. So, okay. Here's the good news, is that if you get a college degree while you're incarcerated, the recidivism rate drops to 5%. So it is the single strongest factor in helping people continue a successful life on the outside and avoid recidivating. And the reality is that any education on the inside helps lower the recidivism rate. So it makes sense that the most education has the biggest impact on recidivism. And from a financial perspective, this is not about money, but the US spends more than $80 billion a year just on prison systems, just the housing or warehousing. To say nothing of the societal and other fiscal costs of having a parent who's incarcerated or a loved one. And then for every $1 we invest in education, we save $5 in reincarcerating people, because in education is helping people succeed. Okay, that's the end of the slideshow. But I'll leave that up because I think that 5% number is really powerful. That's when it clicked for me that there's something impactful going on, and this is good, and how could I get involved? So I got involved, I'll just give you a heads up, I got involved 20 years ago or so because I went to a talk at my church, and look what happened. So I started mentoring a woman who was getting her degree from BU while she was incarcerated at MCI Framingham. And a fun fact, not so fun, but a fact is that there used to be more than 500 colleges and universities in the US that offered degree programs for incarcerated people. And then the 1994 crime bill eliminated Pell Grant funding for incarcerated people, and that number went down to 7. We went from more than 500 to 7, and BU was one of the few remaining, and that was the positive heavy hand of John Silver, who insisted on keeping that program on BU's dime without the revenue of the Pell Grant funding. And when you think about, 1994, that was the height of tough on crime and mass sentencing that we now know didn't work very well. And the good news is that after 30 years, Pell Grant funding was just restored. So it actually was piloted under President Obama, managed to not get killed under his successor. And then it was reactivated last January by President Biden and went into effect in July. So in the meantime, we've seen more colleges and universities get into this. So Tufts, Emerson, and BC all have degree programs. Clark University and others have faculty who are teaching in degrees programs or also offering credit for returning citizens, which sounds like not a huge deal, but when you think about the unwinding of admissions policies, right? I have a high school senior, and I can tell you it is hard to get into college right now. And I would be willing to bet that 95% of all colleges in this country probably have a flat admission policy that if you have a felony on your record, you don't get in. So to unwind that and to offer admission and continuing credit to formerly incarcerated people, that's a big deal. And if colleges are doing that piece, that's a lot too, even if they don't have a full degree program in a facility. So I got involved about 5 years ago. I got back involved, and we invited the executive director of Partakers to come to St. Anne's. And what I didn't anticipate, but probably should have, was about 10 people said, "Sign me up, I want to do this." And so we formed a couple of teams of mentors, and this is what Partakers does: is we create little teams of 2 to 4 people per student, and you write and visit each month. And that's kind of it. It's, we can't take anything inside. It's not academic tutoring. And when I see classes on the syllabus like quantitative reasoning and genetics, I think, oh, thank God. I would not be a great tutor for those subjects. But we just provide encouragement and support. And what we think of as all the student services that we probably got when we were at school. And by student services, I mean the clubs and friends and all the motivating factors, everything outside of instruction is really, that falls under the umbrella of student services. And according to the Center for Educational Statistics, I just learned that on campus across the US, the cost of those services is actually increasing at a higher rate each year than the cost of instruction. Because that piece really matters. It really matters that people feel motivated and supported and enjoy the environment, and like college is fun because it's a lot of work. So that's kind of what we do, is we provide that encouragement and support and motivation because our students are trying to earn a college degree from a 9x6 cell that they share with another person, and that includes their bathroom, and it's hard, and there's not a lot on the inside that's structured to encourage people to do well in school. And for a lot of our students, they are first in their family, so they don't have necessarily a reference point for higher education or the expectation that this is something they'll just do, like we probably, most of us, all grew up with. So Tufts faculty go in and they teach classes in the classrooms. A lot of people think this is like a correspondence course or it's college light. It's not. We get the syllabi, and I can tell you it's for real. It's a ton of reading, it's a lot of work, and it's really these dedicated faculty who go in and make it happen. There's a wonderful documentary some of you may have seen a few years ago. Ken Burns and Lynn Novick profiled the Bard College program in New York. They actually previewed it at MCI Concord before it aired on PBS. And our students said, it's just like that. The facilities, the discussions, the classrooms. Our students also say that the classroom is the one place where they tend to forget that they're in prison. It's a really creative learning environment, and I can't say enough good things about the faculty and the universities that go in and make this happen. So I'll just say a few more things about being a mentor. And we hope that we're drumming up some good interest here and that you'll want to take that step. So again, you're part of a team, and the purpose of that team is you're a little unit, and that structure is really important because consistency is one of the most important things that we provide to our students. So we write and visit once a month, and you can write by regular mail, or there's actually an app. If you've ever written to a kid at camp, it's like a limited email product. And our students have secure tablets, but they don't have unfettered internet access. It's more like being on a plane and you have what's offered in front of you. And the app, the Core Links app, is this little limited email product that they can access. But that makes the writing really easy. I honestly often write to my student from my phone. So we write about once a month, and the team in some combination visits once a month. So, if I'm on a team with you, you and I might go in February, and you two might go in March. And that's how a lot of teams alternate, is they go together. It's fun to go with people on your team. It's really nice to grow and get to know people in your church in this new way when you're on a team. And I can't say enough good things about that piece. And I honestly think we get so much more out of it than our students do. Kentel might differ. But really, it is hands down the most rewarding experience for me. My husband now goes, it turns out our student and my husband love to think about NFL and NBA trades. And one day I was always getting these messages, and I said, could you please write? I said, I am not a reliable messenger of who we're excited about maybe getting on the Celtics. And by the time I would get to the visiting room, I was like, there's a guy and there's a ball, and we're excited about him, and I cannot remember if it was the Patriots or the Celtics. So now my husband goes, and actually my senior in high school started going about a year ago too, and it's been really interesting to see my student who is, closer in life experience to my son than he is to me, which is kind of amazing, and to see that relationship develop. I'll save the experience of going inside for the Q&A time, and we can talk a little bit about the details, but I'll just say it's pretty straightforward, and we sit in an open visiting room in rows of chairs facing our mentee. I often go by myself. It's very, it's not like in the movies. There's a whole culturative narrative around crime and prison in this country, and it's, you'd be surprised at how kind of unassuming it is to sit in a room with vending machines and another person and shoot the breeze, and just support someone and accompany someone in this experience that they're having, and provide them some encouragement. And also just, we dare to show up. I often say to churches, Partakers is it's not a religious organization, and we don't impose our views on our students. Our job is the opposite. We are listening, and we are trying to help them become more independent, critical thinkers with agency of thought and what they think for themselves. So it's a ministry of showing up and respecting another person and giving them the benefit of the doubt and helping them see themselves and their futures a little differently than they might without our support. Sally, am I missing anything super critical?
I think you've done a great job.
This is my mentor is Sally Chrisman, who's mentored 4 students over the years. And whenever I have a question that I can't answer, Sally's my go-to person. And Sally made the connection to First Parish, so she's here with us today through the Buells. And Sally is the volunteer coordinator for the Boston College program, which is at MCI Shirley, which is not that far away. And I do want to acknowledge the news of this week that I'm sure everyone heard, which is that MCI Concord will be closing in June. So right now that's where the bigger picture, that's really good. It's going to be disruptive for the Tufts program because that's where it is. But I know for sure that the DOC is very committed to the Tufts program, and it will continue. And our best guess is it will probably move to Norfolk. The other best guess is it might move to Shirley, but Tufts is at MCI Concord, Emerson is at Norfolk as well, and Boston College is at MCI Shirley. And for people in this area, we're really looking for people who could just take that little drive out route too, and be a mentor to a Boston College student at Shirley. So Sally, can you just stand up so everyone knows who to talk to about Boston College and Shirley later? Later, yeah. I just want people to see you. Yes, Sally's great. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my good friend Kentel Weaver, who I'm so happy could be here with us today. Kentel came home about a year ago, and he's about to resume his education on campus in the fall. Is that right? Yeah. So give it up for Kentel.
It looks like a lot more of y'all when I stand up here. All right. How y'all doing? My name is Kentel, and part of my story is I went to prison when I was 16, and I got out when I was 35. So I did 19 years and like 4 months in jail. 19 years, 4 months, 12 out. Nah, I don't remember all that. I'm lying. But yeah, I spent a lot of time in there. I went in there when I was 16, and unfortunately at 18, I ended up with a life sentence, and it pretty much crushed me. So I was just in there with no type of guidance, and I just like was in a hopeless state of mind and was just doing whatever I wanted in there, because that's how my anger was like the only emotion I really know how to deal with at that time. So I just kind of fed off of that, and I kind of ended up in like worse situations than I actually was in to begin with than I started. And so like, and even in all of those situations, my mother used to always tell me, she's like, yo, what's the first rule when you find yourself in a hole? And then she's been telling us this since we was a kid. Like, yo, what's the first rule when you find yourself in a hole whenever we get in trouble? And the rule is just stop digging. The rule is that simple, and I just feel miserably every time. Like, it was just horrible. And then so I found myself at like, I don't know, like 26, 27, just going through a like identity crisis, trying to figure out who I wanted to be, who I was while I was in there, and doing something good, doing something bad. And I know this dude Ben from restorative justice circles in there. That's why when I seen him, I'm like, oh, I know you. Like, so yeah, doing some good, doing some bad. And then later on, I started to focus more on the good. The law in Massachusetts changed where they said you couldn't give a person that caught a case my age like that amount of time. So they end up overturning my case in like 2013, and I was at a very low point where I was in like DDU, which is like prison inside of prison, because I had got into a whole bunch of trouble. And then so when I got that notice in the mail, it's telling me like you can see parole in 2019, and it was like 2013, and I'm just like, oh, okay, I got this opportunity to go home, but like I'm probably not gonna get this, because I done dug myself in such a deep hole that I don't know if they're gonna see me as like an eligible candidate for it. So I just was kind of in my head about that. And then like the number one thing that I kept thinking about was my mother and my sister, because like throughout my whole time in there, my mother and my sister was like the one constant. Like I could always count on them for whatever, for visits, mail, pick up the phone whenever I needed them. So I was like, yeah, I gotta like make a effort to try to get this parole. If like they've been doing all of this stuff to sacrifice to make sure I was good in there, like I gotta at least try like my hardest to get this parole. So that's what I did. Like from that day on, I just got out, and I just didn't really know like where to begin. So I was just like, all right, let me get a job first. Maybe that'll keep me out of trouble. And I'm like, and it kind of worked. Like, I got a job in the kitchen, and that kind of kept me out of the way for half of the day. And then I had to figure out what to do with the other half of my day. And it was just like picking and choosing who you spent your time with, thinking about like programming a little more seriously and being receptive towards whatever was being taught. And so I was in Shirley Max, like trying to fight my way out. I remember I got out of DDU, and which is like the prison inside of prison, and then I spoke to the caseworker. She said, all you have to do is stay out of the hole for a year, and we'll let you transfer to a medium security, which is like Concord or North. And I'm just like, a year is a long time. Like, I couldn't like even fathom being able to stay out of trouble for that long. And so I was able to, and then I went to Concord. And then Concord at that time, it wasn't like the ideal place when you go to classification is like they ask you what jail you want to transfer to. It's like Norfolk, because Norfolk is like it has these degree programs and dog programs, and there's so much programming that goes on over there. So it's like, if you want to change, you can go to Norfolk. There's like, nope, we're going to send you to Concord. And this is the dumping grounds for just everything negative. So I ended up in this place, and then I was getting in trouble a little bit because I didn't know what to do with the freedom. It was like so much freedom at my hands, like I just didn't know what to do with it. And then slowly but surely, And this is why it's how my mother be like, God work in mysterious ways, like slowly but surely. Like this became Concord ended up becoming like one of the best prisons there was to be at for programming, because then it was like the barbershop program came, and then the culinary program came, and then transforming anger through nonviolence, and then restorative justice, and then the Emerson program came. So I'm like, oh, I might have ended up in a halfway decent situation, but then it was like I still didn't know. Like even when the Emerson program did come, it was like I didn't know like how I would feel in like the setting of a classroom, because that's one of those spaces where I just didn't feel like I belonged. Never felt smart enough. You're dealing with the imposter syndrome. It's just a whole bunch of things that I was dealing with. Like when people was trying to encourage me to get involved in the college programs, and I wasn't feeling it at first. And then they did a lecture series, which was different professors came in each week, and then they just gave us lectures on whatever it is they specialized in. So sometimes it was biology, it was the Bible, it was genetics, it was just all of these subjects I knew nothing about, but I'm so argumentative. I'm like, no, that's wrong. Like, they see the way I was engaging, like with and I guess she liked that, so she was like, you should sign up for the three-year degree program we about to do when it comes here in a couple months. And I just like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that, because I'm like, I don't come from a place where like I've seen like products of education. I don't know anybody's father who's a doctor or a nuclear engineer or a lawyer. Like, I don't know that. Like, everywhere I come from, it's like, my mother worked at Burger King for 30 years. Like, so it's like, and nobody, the only person in my family that graduated was my older sister. So it's like, I just didn't see it as a path for me. And then I was going back and forth with Hillary, and she was just like, if I can't guarantee you anything, I can guarantee you that this Tufts degree holds some some weight. Like, you may not understand it now, but I guarantee you that this degree holds some type of weight. And I still was like, eh. So I still, and then I spoke to another person that was in the class with us, and he kind of convinced me to do it. And so I signed up, and I didn't even think I was going to get in, because they make you write an essay, which I'm pretty good at writing because I've been doing that my whole life. But it was the math part. I was like, if I got to sit down, I got to do math. I'm not even going to get past that part. And she's like, it's not really based on that. We just want to see where you're at. And so I ended up doing it, and I ended up getting in. And it felt like a Willy Wonka in a chocolate factory thing. When you get the letter, you like, oh, like it's just all of us. Some people was getting the letters where they didn't get in, but it just felt good to be able to be in that program when I finally did get in. And then when I got in, and I got to be in these classrooms, and I got to learn about health and human rights, and I got to learn about philosophy and ethics and morality. It's like I started seeing how it only amplified what I already possessed. So I was like, I almost passed up on one of the most crucial like elements of like it got. And then a lot of the times I think of like people like Malcolm X, who he always says like, no, my mother would be like, oh, so she always constantly says like, what would Jesus do? She's a very spiritual woman. But I'm like a big fan of Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, all these people who were like black revolutionary thought. And then I just be like, yo, what would Malcolm do if he just knew that I just had this opportunity to get this education that's probably like $250,000 something I'll never be able to afford. But yeah, I just almost passed it up like out of arrogance or out of ignorance, and so like that's the thought that I keep at the forefront of my mind when I step in those classrooms, and I'm like, I'm feeling insecure about learning, or I'm feeling just like not like I belong. The more I walk away from those classes, it was like the greater my confidence became. So it was good for me. And then when they offered like the program and the Partakers program and the mentors, it was kind of weird, because we all was like, oh, like what is this again? Like, what is people coming to visit us and like strangers? Like, it is just like, it was a dynamic we all couldn't really grasp like that, because it's just, we all have these abandonment issues and trust issues and all this stuff that we've been through like long before like we meet people who are trying to give us a helping hand. And it's just like, it's hard for us to get past that that threshold and like find some common ground just because we've been so scorned and like traumatized by whatever happened to us in the past. So I kind of went into it with that, and I was looking at my partakers. They're from Wellesley, older white ladies from Wellesley. They like 60, 50, and I'm like this young black man. I'm like, yo, why y'all here? Like, like I need answers. I need clarity. And then it's like once I was able to like sit down, and that's like the power of conversation. Once I was able to sit down and then just have those stripped conversations and be honest and be vulnerable, it was like I got to know them a little bit better than I had perceived, and it was vice versa. The same way they may have thought whatever they had thought before they met me, and I was able to change some of their views, and they was able to change mine. So it was like a transference of energy that was just beautiful. And I still talk to them till this day. I'm supposed to go out with them next week. So yeah, it's like it's pretty much a partnership, because there's not always things in there that we have access to. I could be doing a paper on whatever, like let's say genetics, for instance. I'm like, yo, I don't even know where to begin with this subject and this research that they can look up for me that I don't have access to, because in there you don't have Google. It's like we have the luxury of Google. You can look on your phone at any given time of the day and just have any type of information at your grasp, but it's not like that in there. The library is not as like up to date as it should be, so it's like we be struggling with that. And then just also certain things, like sometimes you need idea, like what my friend David always says, is just like being able to go in there on a visit with a partaker and bounce ideas off of them about a paper. Or like I would write a paper, and then one of my partakers was a professor at in one of the colleges in Worcester, and so she said, send me your paper, and I send her my paper, and she'd be like, wrong, wrong, you spelled this, you used this wrong, and I'm like, I would be in my feelings about it, but it was good for me as a writer to like have that person to be able to help me with my writing and stuff like that. So that's pretty much what it is. It's just like a partnership on you just helping the individual like cultivate some type of growth on like their higher education and prison journey, and it's like it's a good thing, because I feel like it's something that we need. Without it, it's like it would have made that experience a little bit more harder. It's like sometimes we be forgetting that whole it takes a village phrase to like get us through certain things. So yeah, that the little bit of help that you get from a mother, a friend, a father, a girlfriend, or whoever is always like that extra inch that we need. So you may hit those moments, if you do sign up, you may hit those moments where you feel like, what am I doing? I don't have anything to offer this individual, and you feel like you hit a brick wall, but it's like, it's not. I was telling them last week, I'm saying, like, a lot of the times it's not even you. We dealing with our own internal struggles, and we just trying to get past that in order to meet you halfway. So that's what it be. So yeah, that's a little bit of my story. Thank you.
Thanks, Pentel. So we just want to like throw it open to you guys for questions that you have about what it's like to be a mentor, what it's like to be inside, what the value of mentors are. Just don't be shy. Yeah.
If we were to get involved, is there a training program?
Yes, we do have.
Question, so people can't hear without.
And people online can only hear from the microphone, so that's why you have to repeat it. Well, the question was training. What training do you provide? What's required? What's that look like?
Yours truly provides a very comprehensive 1.5 hour training on everything you need to know to be a mentor. And Sally and I, and we have another co-patriot who we are sort of your point people as you go through this experience. We've also developed a mentor onboarding guide, which has really everything step by step, this application, and then how to apply to be a visitor with the DOC and all of that. There's a sample introduction letter. I mean, really, we lay it out, like everything you need to know. And then you've got this team, and the team aspect is really critical. And, we walk you through it. We give you a solid training. We answer all of your questions. And we're there for you as you go through it. And there is the beginning. There's just like a little bit of bureaucracy in getting approved to visit. The DOC turns out not to be a super speedy, efficient organization. So, you have to put your application in the mail. You have to wait a little while. But once you're approved to visit and you set up a little schedule with your team, you're good to go and it just flows. But yes, we're there for you. We give you good training. We tell you everything you need to know. Paula.
I know. I noticed when each of you was speaking that you spoke about a range of ages of people who are on the teams, and I'm kind of curious. You know, one of the things I think about, as far as I'm concerned, is I was like, oh, I'm too old, you know, and but then I heard you say that. You had taken that you have a senior in high school who's going out as part of a team. So I'm just curious, you know, how does the age break down? And
So I think anyone can be a mentor. I mean, technically you have to be 21. So my son is not technically a mentor, but he's on our team, and he goes. He just has to bring his birth certificate, and he has to come with a parent. But otherwise, I mean, we have people who are, I mean, it's a great thing in retirement. You guys have all the time in the world. I often say if I can do it, anyone can do it, because I was raising 2 kids and working full time and on a couple of boards and trying to have a few friendships. So it is, I think there's this huge range of people who do it. We're seeing some younger people. I would say probably the median age is like in their 50s, maybe. Does that feel about right? I feel like, yeah. But I think anyone can do it. I think if you drive or have access to someone who drives, that makes it easier to get there. But otherwise, Sally, do you want to talk about?
On my last team, there was me, old, of course, 20 years younger than I am now. No, well, not quite 10. And then there was an undergraduate from UMass Boston, and then an older person. Not retired yet, but heading toward it, and then a 40-some-year-old who did human resources at a high-tech company. So we were very diverse, and I think that one of the most valuable things for me, I mean, I always talk about Brian Stevenson, who wrote Just Mercy, and Brian Stevenson says if you want to change the narrative, the racial narrative, the first thing you need to do, he's talking to me now, is to get proximate with other. And it's very I was finding it very difficult to be a white woman in the suburbs and find an authentic way to be proximate with other. And Partakers did this for me, not only with the 4 different men I mentored over that 20-year period, and Melanie recruited me at Trinity Church 20 years ago. But also the people I went out with on my team, I would never have met them otherwise. And one of the ones who we stuck with mentoring, I think 3 different people together. And she would always say on the way back from the prison, wow, you know what? That would have been me. She had a very wild and rocky childhood, and she felt it was just a miracle that she wasn't the one in Framingham. So I got to know her. We're best friends. So I got to know people I would never have crossed paths with otherwise, not only in the prison, but my teammates. And there were 4 different teams over the year. My first team was a team of 2, and then one moved to Rhode Island, so I was a team of 1. And he and I are still in touch. And I'm still in touch with 2 of the 4 people I mentored.
Thanks, Sally.
And I would just like to add to it. It's not all like my classmates vary in age too, because like somebody like Shakir was probably in his late 50s, and Shaheed was probably in his late 40s. Marty was definitely in his 50s. So it's like you got to think about like the variety of people that's in there. Some is Asian, some are Cambodian, some are Puerto Rican, some are Dominican, some are older white. Like it's not all just one cast of characters that you're dealing with. It's just people from all over with all different type of backgrounds and different age ranges. So yes, that too.
Hi, I'm Caroline. Thanks for talking. I'm curious, can the mentors do anything to expand resources that you have, or is that only up to the professionals with the university institutions? Well, I'm just curious, if you don't have access to databases and you're writing these papers and you have the assignments, are you just getting the reading material that they send you? Okay, because I know we can't bring anything in.
So, go ahead.
Well, most of the time it was like I got it through like a cut and paste email. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because we can get emails while we're in there too. So it was either getting it through that or from like, yo, I want to know more about this subject. She's like, yo, I found you a book on this, and go over the books with me. I'll pick one and then she'll just send it. So it's like things like that. Yeah.
The students should have all that they need for the program, but definitely they seem to want to go deeper. And a good example is this past fall, my student he was in his last semester and he was doing this big capstone paper, and that's whatever they decide to do it on. So they don't have access to all they need, and there is a library, and they can also tap resources like JSTOR and things like that to get the research that they need, but there's sort of a limit to what they can get and how quickly they can get it. So my student was really doing his paper on the relationship between social disease and physical disease. So and turns out there's a lot of research out there about racism-related stress and what it does to your body. And I think he wrote like a really heavily well-researched love letter to his mother in this 44-page paper. And it was largely about the impact of incarceration and racism-related stress on Black women. And I learned a ton, but that's the kind of thing where he didn't, we could do, a team of 4 people could send him studies. We could go and do some research for him and said, this study is really recent, looks really good, this might be helpful, things like that. Sometimes we will send them through core links, which leaves them cutting and pasting if it's really time sensitive. Otherwise, I just print them and pop them in the mail so that they can have access and they can see graphs. Core links it's just text. You can't even send an emoji, let alone an attachment or an image or a graph or something like that.
Because I was trying to get like a atlas. I'm like big on, it's funny, I'm like big on geography and like knowing where things are, because we be reading about all these different countries. So I'm like, all right, where's that at? What's next to it? What's this? What's that? And so I ordered an atlas, and my Partakers ordered me an atlas, and they wouldn't give it to me. It's like, oh, it's too big. I'm like, what do you think I'm gonna do with this atlas? It's like, what do you think I'm gonna do with this? And then I had to write and like bring it to a happy hour and show her what it was on. Like, and then they end up eventually letting me get it, but it was like little stuff like that. I can't keep going to the library in the atlas that they had in the library. It wasn't as old, as pages torn out. It's like certain stuff missing from it. So I'm like, I'm gonna just buy my own, and that'd be like some of the obstacles and things like that. It's like you want to go to the library sometimes, but they don't have like it's a more dated version of everything, so you can't get exactly what you need. And then funny, I went to Rhode Island yesterday, and then Friday we was driving down there, and she's like, oh, we're trying to go to Chick-fil-A, and then I see it on the navigation thing, it says Attleboro. I'm like, Attleboro, that's too far. She's like, we're in Attleboro. I'm like, I'm like, that's south, right? She's like, yeah, we're south. She's like, Rhode Island is beneath us. She's like, how do you know where this is in Africa, and this is in Africa, and this is in South America, but you don't know where Rhode Island is? I was like, oh. Yeah. So it's like stuff, yeah, that was funny. She was on my back about that, like, yeah, you're horrible. Like, yeah, that was funny. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Alice. I don't really know. Is there a prison for women? And are there many? And would a partaker volunteer necessarily as a woman go to work with women, or would they be with men and vice versa, men with women?
Good question, Alice. There is a women's prison in Massachusetts. It's MCI Framingham, and it's getting kind of empty, which is good. And when I started, I was mentoring someone in the BU program there. So what's happened in the intervening years is that we're just incarcerating women less and for lower times. As a matter of fact, in Massachusetts, our incarceration rates have dropped 50% in 10 years. I mean, that's one of the reasons why MCI Concord is closing. But the short answer is that we're just not seeing as many applications from women. Like we see almost none. And the BU program is now a certificate program. It's 18 months. So between that short program and these shorter sentences that the women are seeing, we're not getting applications for mentors from women. So our greatest need is in the degree programs and the men's prisons. They're the ones applying for mentors. Yeah.
Melanie, do you want to talk about duration and sticking with it for?
Yes, Allie asked me to talk about the duration and sticking with it. So the expectation is that people stay with the student for the duration of their college journey, and depending on where the student is when they get mentors, it could be 2 to 4 years. Mine was actually 5 years because my student was doing this through COVID, and there were 2 years when we couldn't visit. You know, I think there were times when the classes they couldn't be happening because prisons were using isolation as a means of quarantining people during deep COVID. It was terrible. So I think that, anyway, mine was 5 years. It flew by. It's kind of like a long, slow burn because it's this very flexible time commitment over a long period of time. Partakers also has a reentry program with Brandeis, and their mentors are, meeting once a week, every week for 12 weeks. On Zoom with people who are trying to navigate the challenges of being home and re-entering society. So that's a shorter, more intense commitment. Personally, I just like supporting people in a college program, and I don't mind the duration. But I say this over and over again between now and when you sort of get your assignment, is that consistency is everything. And Hillary Binda, the director of the Tufts program, said it so beautifully once. She talked about all the positives of mentors and the ways in which she notices a difference. She said, I can tell who has mentors because of their level of engagement and their confidence. And she said, I see a shift when people have mentors in class. She notices a difference. And then she talked about, she said she had this slide called The Harm, and she did it in such a beautifully academic way. She said, when people drop off, we just reinforce patterns of abandonment and broken promises that have followed them their whole lives. And I extend that in the training to say, when we're also inconsistent, we do that too. Our students know that we are supposed to visit every month. And so when we don't, it's just reinforcing inconsistency for people who've had more than their share often of that. So again, it is sort of a minimal flexible time commitment. And if you're on a team of 4 people, that might mean you go every other month. That's 6 times a year. That's highly doable. You write every month. It's really doable, but consistency is everything, and we don't want people to drop off. And if they do, if someone moves, life happens, all of that, we say, communicate well, model a good goodbye, don't just kind of disappear. That's sort of the worst.
Yeah, because I had three mentors, and it's Sue, Kathy, and Pam, and Sue and Kathy, I feel like that did most of the work, and Pam couldn't be there most of the time. So it's like, but I didn't feel any type of way towards her not being there, because I'm like, I get it. It's like life happens, and then you got an audible. So, but she was still like in and out whenever she could be. But yeah, it's like, but everybody deals with that differently. Me, I was able to be more understanding about whatever she was going through, but not everybody would be as understanding. So I don't know. I just feel like you got to be mindful of it. That's it.
I'm Sarah Cannon Holden. Is there once the program's completed, once the inmate finishes the program, is there a follow-up with them to help with jobs, whatever it is? And the other, what is the law in Massachusetts about their conviction record? Does it get expunged or is it always there? Well, isn't that a problem for getting a job, even though you've done all of this?
Yes, yes, it is. I'll answer quickly about like what happens when people graduate. So technically the commitment is through the college program. And what we do is when people graduate, like, you know, Partakers just sent letters to all the graduates saying congratulations, and this officially ends your participation in the Partakers program. So Partakers has this partnership with universities and a partnership with the Department of Corrections. And once people graduate, they're free to step back or to mentor a new student, or many teams just stay in touch because these are really strong relationships that they've built over time and they want to keep going. My student just graduated and he's eligible for parole in a year and a half. So I'm not going anywhere. I mean, even as we need new mentors and I could move on to mentor a new student, you know, this is someone I want to stay in touch with and keep visiting for the next year and a half, and then I'll probably go on. But anyway, so the expectation is for the duration of the college program, and then people can go on or step back after that. Yeah, absolutely. Our society makes it so hard for people once they've done their time to be successful on the outside. I'll let Kentel talk about that.
Yeah, and after like, you can get your record expunged after a certain amount of years. I forget what the period of time is. It might be like 7 years, it might be 10 years, or somewhere between 7 and 10 years or something like that. But yeah, when you get out, it's definitely not easy. But like in my case, I applied for a couple of jobs, and it was like, you always got to deal with the F, the scarlet letter, the felon. So I went into it knowing that, like being well aware of like what I was about to be dealing with. And so I applied to a couple of jobs. I didn't get some of them, got ghosted on some of them. And then one lady in Sudbury, like I went over there for a job. It was like a job for a dishwasher. And I spoke to her. She said, hey, you seem like a good candidate, but then I got to do a background check too. You're going to pass a background check? I'm like, no. Like, nah. Like, and then, but I explained, she was so cool, I felt like I could tell her why, which is not always the case. So I sat there and literally broke down everything to her, like straight honesty, like, yo, this is my situation, I just got out of prison, did 19 years, and then she's like, oh, I can't hire you here, but I know a friend somewhere else that can hire you in another place. And then she sent me to the Wayside Inn. She sent me to so I work at the Wayside Inn right now. yeah, I work at the Wayside Inn. And that lady's name in Sudbury, her name was Wendy Miller. And then she sent me to Tara, who works at the Wayside Inn. And then Tara was just like so understanding. Like when I sat there and talked to her about like where I came from, and it just gave me a shot. And that's all it really be, man. Just like, give me an opportunity to show you what I can do. Don't just like blackball me just because you can. Like, we all talk about change. We all talk about like being accepting and loving and these Christian characteristics or whatever. Just like regular human decency. Like we all talk about that. But then when it comes to certain things, we're like, but I don't like. You know what I'm saying? So it's like being genuine in that and standing on it, and like, yo, when it is time to give a person an opportunity, just like, you know, try it out. Having that conversation might change things.
Kentel, will you talk a little bit about the My Turn program at Tufts and what that stands for and how that helps people transition?
So the My Turn program is pretty much for anyone who did higher education in prison. It's like a segue into college, so you can get like resources there. It's like digital literacy classes, financial literacy, it's like restorative justice circles, and a couple of other things that they know you'll need. And whatever else, it may be outside of that. You may be like trying to figure out how to sign up for health insurance or something like that. And Hillary and Quinn will do the research for you and like help you figure out what it is that you need, and that's pretty much the point of it. And then it's 8 months, and you take it's two different halves of it, and you take 2 classes on each half. And I'm on the second half right now. The first half was like the technological one where they give you a MacBook and they show you how to do Google Slides, Google Sheets, and all of these different software programs, so you can go to some type of employment. Oh, I just got a job, a different one. Yeah, so it's like learning the skills on the computer so it'll be applicable when you do go into the employment field. That's a little bit better or a little bit more suited for us. And I ended up getting a job at another place called North Suffolk. And it's pretty much working with people with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and like any other people that are dealing with, like, they need resources from the state. And you just point them in the right direction, or you just help them, help them talk their way through whatever struggles they're going through. So that's the job I just got, like, last week. So I keep forgetting, because I didn't start it yet, but yeah, I should be starting that sometime next month. But yeah, that's what my turn's for. But it's not just for people that was doing like higher education in prison too. If you was out here right now and you just wanted to pick up where you left off with your studies, she'll welcome you into the program too and just allow you to go through it the same.
So that's Tufts reentry program. Partakers has a reentry program. I've seen all the Tufts students come out and go to Tufts reentry program, and the energy on campus is just amazing. Like, it's great, and we get opportunities to be on campus as well. So I think a lot of the universities have reentry programs, and they partner with different organizations in Boston, like Justice for Housing, because, you know, it's actually, I mean, it's not easy to find a job, but it's much harder to find housing. And where are you going to work if you don't know where you're going to live? Like, I can't imagine, like, even thinking about applying for a job if I don't know where I'm going to live. And that is the biggest barrier. And I think there are a lot of legislative efforts to make it easier for people so that they're not, you know, being banned from housing because of their record after they've done their time. So.
And there's a $300 stipend that they give you every month too, which is like, it helps. You know what I'm saying? So, I know you had your hand up.
I just wanted to know if the law if you could talk about the law as it applies to minors versus adults.
The law in which sense, yeah.
Whether your record, if you're a 16, I think you said you were 16.
Yeah.
You were a minor.
Yeah.
But that remains on your record.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether you're a minor or an adult if you've committed if you've been convicted of some crime.
Yeah. No.
The big change was that you used to be able to be sent away for life as a minor.
Yeah.
And there was a change. Now you can't get life imprisonment if you committed the crime as a minor.
In Massachusetts.
She's like, that's not enough. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, my name is Edwin, and full disclosure, I know about the disenfranchisement and mistreatments and all those things, but I never really took enough time to learn about the seriousness of the problem and things like that. So I want to thank you both for showing us and exposing us to what is going on. I was just very surprised with the college programs for prisoners. I wanted to believe that the universities have some kind of a portal for students to be able to access resource. And I was wondering how the universities wouldn't be allowed to expose this to their students, even if they're in prison, maybe having VPN connection to their portal, and they just get access to the resources so they can do the studies and things like that.
So I think you're asking about, like, do they have access to online resources if they're in the university program? Yeah. So that entails approval from the DOC, right? That's the issue. It's not that the universities don't have online learning. It's about how do you create access inside a prison to that. It requires a secure server. It requires approval of the Department of Corrections, which is inherently cautious about any way of communicating with the outside. MIT is doing some interesting things. They're actually teaching part of their fundamentals of computer programming and Python course by Zoom. They started in Maine because Massachusetts was like, no way. But then they did in Maine, and Maine turns out to be a more progressive correctional system. And now MIT is able to do a little pilot in Massachusetts, but you can't sort of do it the way a typical student would do it because of the access issue and setting up a secure server in a prison. And I how much is legislative and how much of it is, I think it's sort of a combination. It all sort of overlaps. And there is, when you really look at it, if you look at the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus in Massachusetts and you talk to your state senator, Senator Jamie Eldridge was at the graduation inside, and he's been at every event that I've been to. There are other state reps who are really involved and concerned, and I just had dinner with my state, I'm doing something else with a group that her husband's part of, so I met my state Senator Cindy Friedman recently, and I had 1,000 questions for her about what she's super involved in healthcare, but she knows about these things, and I think just communicating to our state reps and legislators that this is interesting to us, and we want to know what's going on, and we want to know where they stand on it. They need to hear from their constituencies that we're informed, and we care, and we want them to be taking action. And one of the mentors when we got the news this week that MCI Concord was closing, I wrote to all of the mentors and said, write to your students today. It's a very tense environment inside MCI Concord. Write to your students and let them know that you're here for them. And one wrote back and said, I wrote to the governor, and I wrote to my state rep and my state senator. And I wrote back to all the mentors and said, P.S., also write to the governor. And basically just saying, please protect this program. And every individual, little ping that our legislators get, that helps. But I think the Department of Corrections is a powerful, powerful force without a lot of accountability. And they make a lot of decisions. Part of the training is we say, when you go into a prison, remember this is not your house. And if you get flagged for a dress code violation, you don't ask to see someone's supervisor. And you don't argue that, We all kind of tiptoe around it a little bit because we're all there at the pleasure of the DOC, and we don't want to do anything to jeopardize the university programs or Partakers or our student. And it's dark. But that's the reality. Is the DOC has just a lot of power, and
I think the universities have to submit their syllabi too.
Yeah, the universities have to submit their syllabi to the DOC. We can't even I tried to get a paper from the Tufts director to my student to say, hey, this is this old article. It's somewhere in the Tufts library. Can you find it and give it to Shaquan? And she said, well, we'll have to go through this whole thing of getting that new paper approved. Our mail is copied. Every bit of mail is read. Our students don't get the original paper because drugs can be embedded in paper. Who knew? I did not know that. So, they get copies of papers, and that makes the mail go slow. I think even core links, everything is read. That, I have to believe, is like an AI scrubbing for keywords thing. I'm sure no one's reading every email because it goes through fairly quickly, but it is really, the DOC is just, it's been so eye-opening for me. This whole system is designed to keep us in the dark, and for us to not know anything about what happens behind that 30-foot wall. It's really interesting, and I learn something new all the time. Yeah.
I think we have time for a few more questions. I did want to just ask, in case there are some people in this room who wanted to move forward with a training, what would be the easiest next steps? Should people send their emails to me and Paula, or send an email to me and Paula? Okay, that was quick. Great.
So that, I normally have a sign-up sheet, but it would be great if you could let Nate and Paula know that you're interested in learning more, and let me assure you, no one just signs up for this like that. People have a lot of questions, so, but we would love to know if you're interested in moving forward, and we can take it from there. I'll send everyone the link to the College Behind Bars documentary. That's a great way to preview what you're getting yourself involved in. And just know that we're really looking for people who can either go to Shirley, which is the closest here, or Norfolk for the Emerson and probably the Tufts program. But that would be the next step. And then we would do an onboarding, quick onboarding, and then we pair you with, we will create some teams here. I can tell by the energy in this room that we have a couple of teams. And then we'll pair you with a student and get you on your way.
This has been really wonderful. You've just given us a wonderful thing, both of you. Thank you so much. I wanted to go back to Framingham, which we talked about. And I'm thrilled about MCI Concord, but there has been a bill in the legislature to build a bigger women's prison and make it nice. And a lot of us have been working on a moratorium of no new jails. And so I'd love to send that around to people when it comes up again, because I think that money should go for rehabilitation since corrections don't correct. So moratorium on building new prisons. Yay.
Hi. So I'm curious, if you're doing college level work and you went in at 16, did you feel that the prison, what they offered you for high school, was adequate?
Yeah. It was, yeah. I never really struggled with like school like that. I just was hard-headed. You know what I'm saying? So when I got my GED, it only took me like 3 months, and I had it. But I feel like what we had access to as far as GED, it was good, but not all. Like for instance, like when I was in a minimum, which made no sense to me. When I was in a minimum before I left Concord minimum, they had brought the college classes there, but the people were interested in college classes, but they're like, ooh, we don't have GED programs here. I'm like, how you skip a whole level of education? And like that didn't make any sense at all, because you had all these people that was seeing what we were doing, and it was like, oh, that's dope, y'all in college and y'all would love to get in that, but then there's no GED program to even like get them to the next level. So that made absolutely no. So it's like little stuff like that goes on in there.
Yeah, because Tufts is a serious school. It's a heavyweight school, and not all high schools, even in the United States, would be adequate to prepare someone for something like Tufts. So I was wondering obviously you have talent. Yeah, it's apparent, right? So I was just wondering how that whole part impacted.
It's like, to be real, like my classmates helped me a lot with whatever I struggle with. Like, so we had like quantitative reasoning. I'm like, yo, I don't know. This is difficult. Like, but I'm like putting in the extra effort, and I'm going to the next unit over, which I'm not even supposed to be doing. I'm going to the next unit over because I know that the people on that unit are better at math than I am, and it's like 6 of them helping me like get through these math tests and quizzes and like math exercises. So it's like stuff like that, and I know I'm better at writing, so when they struggling with writing, and then it's like, all right, now I can help. It's like I don't know, like an exchange that goes on. Like you can help me with something, I can help you with something to make us all like strengthen wherever our weaknesses is. So that was pretty much it. And it was 20. We started off with 26, but through the like hustle and bustle of just being in there, some people leave before they can finish. Like I left, I still got like 32 credits to get until I get the bachelor's degree. So it's like once I'm done with my turn, that gives me 12, and then I'll have 20 credits left. But I feel like I'm like well equipped enough to sit in those classrooms and feel comfortable now. So I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. Yep.
I think we're wrapping up. Yeah. Thanks.
Kentel and Melanie and Sally, thank you so much for sharing this opportunity with us. I hope you saw on the faces of all of us here how excited we are about the possibilities. One more round of applause. Thank you, guys. And just in case anybody didn't catch it who's online or watching this, because we're recording it in the future, if you are interested in learning more and possibly participating in a training, just send me and Paula an email, and we'll go from there, and we'll get it going. Thank you.